Good morning, Gary.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to you online. So with Gary's suggestion from months and months ago, that we decided, or those of you who are still here on like the last two sessions in the spring, we decided for at least for a while to study Talmudic tales. What are called a like, you know, a word like legend or tale or story is called Agadah, right? Or Agadot is plural. So we've studied from the Mishnah, right? We studied the first tractate of the Mishnah, early rabbinic writings, about prayer. But these are a different genre found within rabbinic literature, right? So what is the Talmud? We've talked about this a little bit. We've studied some from the Talmud. We've studied how in the Mishnah, we've studied the early generation of the rabbis, the Tanaim, compiled works like the Mishnah and some other works at that time of halakha, of Jewish living. And but that it didn't end there. The Mishnah became a core part of what becomes the Talmud. The word Talmud means learning or studying, and how there are two Talmuds, and I'll explain that in a minute. But we'll mainly look at the Babylonian Talmud, and I'll explain that. But the Mishnah, then the later generations of the rabbis, trying to understand what the Mishnah means, their discussions become the Talmud, or what's called Gemara, right? And sometimes say the Gemara, the writings of, or the discussions, not writings, the discussions of the rabbis discussing the Talmud, plus other stuff like these tales, these Agadot, become what we call the Talmud. Now, there are two, so what's the time period? So the Mishnah, the Mishnah was codified around 200 CE, right? 1800 years ago. The Talmud of the land of Israel, sometimes called the Jerusalem Talmud, sometimes called the Palestinian Talmud, was codified probably around 400 something CE, but the more popular, the more authoritative Babylonian Talmud, codified in Babylonia, which is now found in the country of Iraq, but there were Jewish communities around, what's now Baghdad, codified probably in 500 or maybe even up to 600 CE. But it took generations and generations for the Talmud, for the rabbis, to be authoritative all around the Jewish world, right? We've talked about that before too. So the rabbis imagined that this is Judaism, right? And it is now, but it took a while. So what do we find in the Talmud or in rabbinic literature, let's say? Okay, so who were the rabbis? We've talked about this. There's a group of scholars who had a way of seeing the Torah as being both the written text that we have plus the oral Torah that was given on Sinai, how to interpret the written text, which eventually became discussions between these sages that eventually became recorded in our rabbinic literature. There's different collections. The two Talmuds are some collections. There's collections of a genre called Midrash, which is a very broad genre. We'll see Midrash in the Talmud. Midrash could mean how to interpret biblical verses. It could mean all different ways of interpreting biblical verses, wordplay, analysis, comparing. Midrash could be to figure out halakha, law, or it could be to figure out theological concepts too, right? The Midrash can mean, if a rabbi says, the Midrash says, they could mean almost anything. The Talmud says, they can mean almost anything, because the Talmud is not is the discussions of the rabbis in the Talmud, Talmudim, in all kinds of rabbinic literature is not, they don't always put a period, meaning it's not always, this is the end of the discussion, right? Okay. And especially when it comes to the Agadot, the stories, the legends that we're going to see, are they authoritative in any way? They're not necessarily telling you how to light your Shabbat candles on a Friday night, right? That's halakha. They're psychological and theological and sometimes just fun and crazy, like any good literature, but they could contradict what another story might be trying to tell, right? They're not systematic in the way like how medieval, some medieval Jews, but definitely, Christians at this time were very concerned about systematic thoughts and heresy, right? Now, there are boundaries of what Judaism was or is, right? But it was much more open and I would say even playful about trying to think about these things, right? And the rabbis thought about things through discussion and stories, okay? And they wrote writing. Writing is an interesting thing. Who wrote the Talmud? Who knows, right? Rabbis had discussions and eventually things got compiled and written down. We can find a story that I'll bring from the Talmud, but there'll be a different story of it in another collection or a different version of it in another collection of rabbinic literature. And, modern, contemporary historians or literary historians will try to figure out what was the original story or where the original one. They'll do language analysis and literary analysis and find parallels in other cultures and things like that. We can maybe look at some of that stuff. That's not my expertise. This is not my expertise either, but I'm in it with you. But what I want to do is just look at the stories we have and analyze them. Like I'm looking at, I'm sure some of you have great literary interpretative skills from college, from book clubs, from everything. Use that. You don't have to know, intricacies of Jewish law to understand these things. I'll explain when something like that comes up, but look at these stories like they're literature. That's what we're going to do because they are, and they're short. And when short story writers, good short story writers are sometimes like the most skilled, right? Because they're able to really people are still reading Kafka and his stories are super short. I mean, he had some novels, but we think about the short stories too, right? So, okay.
Think about the Metamorphosis that we had to read in high school.
Yeah, for sure. And that was actually a short book in novella, right? Yeah. So you'll see stuff like that in rabbi stories too. Yeah.
One comment. You talked about literature and history in terms of historians. I ran into a podcast this summer called Literature and History. And it's a great podcast. I highly recommend it. The backlog includes all sorts of stuff on the Tanakh, etc. I just started listening to the one on the Talmud yesterday because I didn't know we were doing this. I'd forgotten. So if anybody wants that information, I'm happy to give it to you. It's great. It's long. It's like 2.5 hours just on the Talmud.
Very nice. Good.
Now, one more time.
Yeah.
Difference between Talmud and Gemara.
Right.
Yeah, one more time.
Sometimes when you're speaking, no difference.
Okay.
People will say the Gemara says Gemara means like I don't know if it's technical. The Talmud is the whole collection that includes tractates of the Mishnah, and then the later generations talking about those statements from the Mishnah is Gemara.
Okay.
But when some people say the Gemara, they mean the Talmud too.
The confusing thing to me on that we talked about in Plato's here last year.
Yeah.
When you open a page of Talmud today and you see the Mishnah and the Gemara and all the stuff around, I grew up thinking all the stuff around was the Talmud too.
Yeah, right. So okay. So let me show you a picture. I'll do that.
Don't we have a book of that?
Yeah, but I'll put it up on the screen. So what we think of as
Nice necklace, Christy. Christian. Oh, you're
Yes.
That's on.
I
think those.
Hold on 1 second. I'll pull something up. Computers is not one I have found. So
Let's see this.
So you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, here I can make it bigger, right?
This is my chart. Can you read that?
Word for me.
Sorry, like I got a lot. So,
There's something up on that.
how does this work?
Bunch of black writing on
Right.
So, okay. So, this is called a page of the Vilna Shas. Shas means the Shisha Siddharim, the six tractate or the six orders of the Mishnah, right? But Shas is another word for Talmud, okay? Sometimes, but in Vilna, in I don't know what year, but there was a printing house in Vilna that standardized what a page of the Talmud, what we call the Talmud, looks like. But that was in the printing press, much later, right? So it's called the Vilna Shas, and this became influential of how all kind of Jewish works became printed, where you have the central text here in the middle, right? And then you have commentators around the sides, right? Okay.
What's it say is the heading?
So this is the beginning of the Mishnah. Me'em ematai korin et Shema ba'aravin. Remember we read that. From what time can you say the Shema in the evening?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right. So that's the statement from the Mishnah right here, and then it will continue down with later generations of rabbis discussing it.
But
Okay.
Rabbi, what does it say in that box?
Me'em atai, from what time?
Oh, so that all that's in that,
Then there's one word right here, and then the box. It's just like like you look at old books, they like make the first letter or whatever.
Or like gray sheets, the.
Yeah.
But it's just the middle part that we're talking about right now, right? Not
Yeah,
the
so
commentary.
we're only we'll look at stories that happen, and it's very, how the Talmud will work also is very kind of stream of consciousness. You'll have the rabbis having these discussions over generations, right? They're having discussions with people that did not live with them or at the same time as them, because the compiler put these together, right? And traditionally we say the compiler was a rabbi named Ravina, and sometimes there's an editorial voice within the Talmud too. But then all of a sudden a story will pop up that maybe is talking about that point of halakha of Jewish law, maybe not, related in some way, related in a tangential way, maybe. We'll look at context sometimes, okay? So
Rabbi, these stories are in the Mishnah or not in the
what's
Mishnah?
that? The Mishnah does not have many stories. I can't think.
Right,
The Gemara has stories.
Gemaras, and that's what.
Right. And so so the word agadah, right, is a story. Where have you heard that word, agadah? Well, on Pesach we say Haggadah, which is a contraction actually of ha-agadah. It's actually ha-agadat Pesach, the story of Pesach, right? That's where that word comes from, but we say Haggadah, right? Right. Yes.
Rabbi,
Right, and it's going to be a mixture of Hebrew and Aramaic. And some historians will know, like, well, this story means in Aramaic, and it's been this dialect of Aramaic, and that's where they're figuring out if they're coming from Babylonia or they're coming from the Galilee. Most of the rabbis in the land of Israel were in the Galilee at the time, right? It was during Roman and then what became Byzantine domination. The rabbis in Babylonia lived under the Persian Empire, the Sasanians, I think they were called, right? And the Talmud might have really been kind of compiled by the time Muhammad took over. That people argue about that, right? Okay.
Rabbi,
Other questions, yeah.
does the word parable fit in here? Is that a Christian concept?
No, sometimes we'll see. The Hebrew word for parable is mashal, and we'll see parables. A parable is like a story, like a short story, or a short story that like it becomes pretty obvious what it's talking about.
Yeah.
It's less than that.
Yeah, it has a lesson, right? Yeah, parables and like fables. We'll see. We might see fables, but sometimes we'll see things that who knows what genre it is, Yeah,
we see animals talking. No.
we can. We can. Like I'm just randomly picking stories that I like, but like I don't know. We'll see how long we go, and we'll find. And there's been great contemporary works analyzing stories from the Talmud and stuff like that.
The story with the oven from last year.
Yes, good. So right. So we won't say that because we studied that with Clayton. If you weren't here, check out the video. But what the oven of Achmai, that's a great example of a rabbinic tale starring the rabbis. They're not all starring the rabbis. The ones that I brought today are starring rabbis. No, actually, well, Moshe is in it too, but Moses is Moshe Rabbeinu for the rabbis. Moses, our rabbi, right? He's not,
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's not the prophet.
Sometimes he is, but he's Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah. Okay. Great. Other questions? Shall we jump in?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So let us look at this. I brought this one because first, and it's pretty short, but it kind of encapsulates what the rabbinic project is. Okay. And it comes in so it's from the tractate of the Talmud called Minachot, which has to do the mincha offering, the grain offering, but like it's not only what it has to do with, right? But it comes within a context of a discussion of how you write the letters of the Torah. Okay. So here's something we'll have to see, right?
That's serifs.
Just saying, I got to show you a picture again because you've probably seen this, but like,
There's a low pressure system coming in from the west.
you've seen. Pick a random. Just random pictures of Torah scrolls, right? Let's see.
Typography is serifs.
Right. So like you see a Torah scroll here, right? And you see how some of the letters have what we're going to call here crowns, right? There are only you see that when you write a Torah, I can take out those Torah from the ark here, but when you write a Torah scroll, some of the letters have little crowns on top of them, like the ayin, the shin, right? And see, here's an ayin here, a sadi,
Can't see it.
right? Okay, can you kind of see that?
No.
No.
Okay. No.
If you look at the Shema in the prayer book, right?
It's Shammai in I'm feeling not always. Not always. Okay, here's a better example. Just yeah. See here, you see this shin here has a crown on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so shin always has a crown. Okay, so that's part of that is the discussion of which letters have crowns and okay. So that's the halakhic discussion.
What's the
We read
crown?
this.
So we're gonna find
Oh,
out.
we're gonna find
Well,
out.
let's see the story notes. Okay.
And that's,
So now let's
It got to the end of the board and you crowned it.
But there's only when you write. I mean, they didn't have printing; everything from by hand, but only in Torah scroll. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda says that Rav says. Okay. Now, I'll say when you see someone named Rav, it means they learned in a rabbinic academy in Babylonia. When it says Rabbi, it means they learned in a rabbinic academy in Palestine, in the land of Israel. Okay. Right. The how we say rabbi in modern Hebrew today is Rav, not Rabbi. Although in English we say rabbi, or Rabbi comes from rabbi. But if you're in Israel, you say Rav. Why is that? Because the rabbis in the land of Israel had the more authentic ordination that was passed down from Moses to Joshua, laying on the hands. It's called smicha, and they became rabbi. The history, like who knows? That's the myth, right? Okay, so when you see Rabbi, it means they were ordained in the land of Israel. Rav is in Babylonia. Okay, and it also then will say the generations, because the later generations. If you see someone from Babylonia, it's definitely a later generation than we were. Okay, so here's the story. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says. Now again, I'll explain the English here. This is Steinsaltz is a contemporary person in Israel. It is his translation of the Talmud. When it's in boldface, it's literal. When it's in non-boldface. I don't know if I can say non-bold regular. It's a gloss that helps the story flow in English, okay? But sometimes it's commentary, but we'll read it. It makes it easier, okay? So someone go.
When Moses ascended on high, he found the Holy One, blessed be he, sitting and tying crowns on the letters of the Torah.
Stop. Moses ascended on high. What are we talking about?
Going up to Sinai.
Going up to Sinai. Okay. But ascended on high could also mean
Went to heaven.
like Elijah. Or is it the same thing?
Or was he smoking weed?
Yeah.
You know what? There are archaeologists that try to prove that. I don't know. There are potheads who think they know history that try to prove that in the spice mix in the temple had cannabis in it, right? You know, and that Ezekiel was okay. Good, but he's meeting God, and what's God doing?
Tying crowns.
Tying crowns. Okay, God's scribing a Torah. Right? God gives Moses the Torah. God's giving Moses a Torah written by God. Okay, by putting these the things on top of some of the letters, right? Okay.
If this was written 400 CE,
Who knows when it was written?
okay, but think about it. The evolution of the alphabet
Yes. Right. Oh,
was
so
right
good.
about that time.
Well,
So
so no.
right-
Now I'm gonna make it even more complicated. The time of Moses, the Hebrew alphabet looked totally different than the alphabet we have now. The rabbis also knew that. They knew what the ancient Hebrew alphabet looked like. But they're telling a story.
Yeah.
And so, but yes, so the Hebrew alphabet that we have now is actually comes from Assyrian or Aramaic or something, Aramaic, right? Yeah, they call it the Assyrian, the rabbis call it the Assyrian script, but the Aramaic, it's the alphabet we have now is the Aramaic, the symbols of the letters we have is the Aramaic alphabet, right? There's an older script that's Hebrew, even though Hebrew and Canaanite and Phoenician, similar languages, they're the ones who Phoenician invented the alphabet,
Right.
right? Okay.
But I mean,
Alphabet. Yeah.
writing came into being for commerce.
Yeah, for sure. But
It soon became associated with holy and sacred and
yes,
this.
yeah. So okay, so right, but the rabbis also lived at a time of books.
Yeah.
Right. The rabbis are contemporaries with the early Christians, and they had books already, right? But the rabbis for liturgical Torah reading said it has to be done in a scroll, like our ancestors.
So this was.
But the new technology over the last couple hundred years here was books, right?
1635 was.
Well, that's printing.
Yeah.
That works.
I mean,
But there were codexes in the Roman Empire.
Big book
on
written by, and that's for,
Plato was.
and that was for more than 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Plato would have had scrolls. And Socrates was against writing things down.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why. Plato-
And so were the rabbis until they did,
Yeah.
right? You don't write down the oral law until you do. Okay, keep going.
So Moses said before God, Master of the universe, who is preventing you from giving the Torah without these additions? God said to him.
Right, so what's he asking? Why are you putting these weird things on the letters?
Yeah.
Is he asking that, or is he asking, why are you holding off and not doing it now?
No, he is doing it now.
He's doing it now.
And what?
Why are you
I think
giving the Torah until you put the?
Why are you giving this Torah if I don't know what
When the
it
crown
means?
is letter.
Why we don't know what these mean, right?
It's like making it authentic or something.
No.
The blessing.
Keep going.
Keep going.
God said to him, there's a man who is destined to be born after several generations, and Akiva ben Yosef is his name. He is destined to derive from each and every thorn of these crowns, mounds upon mounds of halachot.
Yeah. So God is putting, then the gloss here is it's for the sake that the crowns must be added to letters. It's for his sake, right? So God's putting these crowns on the letters because God knows that in the future there'll be a guy named Akiva who will know how to interpret them.
Wow.
Okay, who's Akiva?
Rabbi.
Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived in the 2nd century CE. His story, maybe we'll bring his story someday. His story that he was a shepherd, a laborer who didn't know how to read, but he always wanted to study Torah. He married the boss's daughter, And
Good move.
so but he kicked the bar kicked them out of the house because you're marrying the poor ignorant guy. She supports him to go to yeshiva. He's there for years and years, builds up thousands of students, right? At 40, he starts to learn Torah at 40. Okay? There's hope for everybody.
Never too.
And he becomes Rabbi Akiva. Now, historically, Rabbi Akiva, we know Rabbi Akiva, the rabbinic literature tells us he was martyred by the Romans, burned at the stake, right, for supporting a rebellion.
But didn't he believe Bar Kokhba was the Messiah?
He supported the Bar Kokhba rebellion, made it believe he was the Messiah. Yeah, but we'll see other stories. Maybe I'll bring the Akiva origin story. We'll read other stories of him. Akiva is a very important guy of the Tanaim. He was one of the rabbis before the Mishnah was compiled. Okay.
Rabbi, did God know for sure there'd be a person in future generations
The story.
to be born to be able to do this?
Yes.
Or is he just playing that?
No, I mean that's what the story says. God knows, but like what?
What does no mean?
Right. Yeah. So like it's a story where you have to have fun with the stories and see what they're trying to say. Okay. So there's going to be this guy in the future named Akiva who will understand. Don't worry, Moses.
It doesn't smell of Christianity here, because a guy in the
Why
future
do-
thorns on the ground. and-
Why do we care about it? Why do we care that it smells of Christianity?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
cool. I'll say this: like, Christian, like, they got their ideas from the same place that we got our ideas, right? So why does not Christianity smelling like Judaism,
Well, okay.
right? And so,
Or the vote.
but yes, but like the martyr story of Rabbi Akiva, especially looking at in a traditional Yom Kippur prayer book, it's a story like the saint martyr stories of the Middle Ages too, right? Why are we so scared to say that's Christian and this is Jewish, and then when we say this is Jewish, it means we're going to get rid of all this other stuff, right? I'm not blaming that, but like I'm blaming American Judaism does that.
Because we're surrounded by it.
Yeah, right. So, but I would argue sometimes we diminish Judaism and the things that are in Judaism by saying that's Christian, right? Okay.
Because there's a tendency.
Right. So I'll say what's Christian that is not Jewish. Okay, Jesus, like the incarnation and freeing from you from your sins. The Eucharist, that's Christian, but like all the other stuff is like very. I shouldn't say it that way, but like it's coming from the same place. They interpret their texts differently in key places that Jews do, but like we shouldn't be so scared to use words like grace and love and things like that. Those all come from Hebrew.
You used grace last night.
I used grace last night on purpose for that, for people to notice, right? Because like they're reading the same text we are. Okay. And early church fathers, I was reading about this the other day in this book, like there's a classic book about, the ancient rabbis. Early church fathers were mentioning Hillel and Shammai. And if we have time, we'll get to Hillel and Shammai, right? So like the rabbis don't mention the church fathers, right? But the church fathers did mention some of the rabbis, okay.
It is for his sake that the crowns must be added to the letters of the Torah. Moses said before God, Master of the universe, show him to me. God said to him, return behind you.
So it means like turn around. Okay.
Moses went and sat at the end of the 8th row in Rabbi Akiva's study hall and did not understand what they were saying.
Okay, so stop. So Moses said, I want to see this guy. So what did God say? Turn around, and then all of a sudden Moses is sitting in the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Akiva.
Hence the DeLorean in your email.
Hence the DeLorean in my email.
Even though it said born after several generations?
Yeah, this is a story. I told you, this is a time travel story.
Okay.
Not just several generations. Akiva lived 1,000 years after Moses. We forget how old we're talking about here. Right?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I don't know how relevant, but we have friends that that are not Jewish, live in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Actually. And the gentleman just wrote to us and said in his church study group, they are now reading a book called Reading the Old Testament Through Jewish Eyes, a study of the scriptures Jesus read.
All right.
And I thought that was
I think that's right.
I mean, it's really, I mean, it makes me want to look up the book.
Well, I mean, it can, but yeah.
And he says, my description, it's a Torah for Gentiles. but-
Yeah. Right, so there is like, especially in certain strands of Protestantism, is to look at the actual Jewishness of Jesus, and seeing a lot of the stories of Jesus actually is not arguing that the Jews are wrong, but arguing fine points of Jewish law with them, right? So there's a story of Jesus and his disciples picking grain, this goes to my sermon last night, on Shabbat, right? And so Christians historically have interpreted that means Jesus didn't care about Shabbat. We Christians don't need Shabbat, but that's not actually what it's about. They're arguing about the specific act of breaking Shabbat and things like that. And so, like, yeah, if historically Christians knew how Jews of the time interpreted scriptures, Christianity would be very different today, right? But that's fine. They can interpret the way they
We
want.
actually study with a lot of people like biblical Hebrew and like the Tanakh, and there are a lot of most of them are Christian.
For sure.
Is that
They
right?
want to learn Hebrew.
Mhm.
courses.
Yeah.
Rabbi, the question for you, so this is something that I always wondered about, and feel, you tell me if I'm completely off base. So our inheritance, Judaism, Reform Judaism, really all came from this kind of rabbinical Judaism, from its root,
Yeah,
which
sure.
which, as you said, really formed at the same time as Christianity,
Mhm.
both from
Mhm.
I would say, the cult in Jerusalem, which was different from rabbinical Judaism and Christianity. But that cult was the source of both.
100%.
The
But I would argue there's more continuity between the rabbis and the
That's what I'm not getting
I
at.
mean, I'm a partisan, so there's more continuity between what Judaism is
Today.
now, if you could say is, what Judaism evolves into from biblical roots than what became the church. I would say.
Okay,
No,
no, right,
they would argue against that, right? They would,
No,
but-
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's strange
Yeah.
friction there too,
Mhm.
right?
There is a blank page in the Christian Bible between the Old Testament and the New Testament as a way to separate in the fact that they
Right,
they
yeah,
go
so-
different directions.
So Gary just put in the chat to remind us that, saying Old Testament, New Testament is a Christian supersessionist idea.
Yeah.
Right, this has been superseded in the new, right? And I mean, and they're picking up from, is it Jeremiah? I think it's Jeremiah, who says that God's gonna make a Brit Hadad, a new covenant. But there's new covenants all the time in this,
that's it.
right?
That-
It doesn't mean that it's superseding, it means it's like, we're coming together again, right?
No, it's interesting because there's an evangelical who did a translation of the Tanakh that's really designed to sort of take out sort of the Christian interpretations.
Yeah.
He calls it the First Testament because he's saying it's not superseded.
Right,
so
yeah,
we
yeah.
need to.
Yeah, so I mean, supersessionism is really, some Protestants still believe in it, but like, and some traditionalist Catholics, but in the 60s, the Pope said, we don't believe in this anymore. Or, the popes don't say we don't believe in it anymore. They said, we never did believe in it. Is that right? Yeah. And then other Protestant churches have followed suit.
But isn't it, for me,
Mhm.
the Talmud, the Mishnah,
Mhm.
these stories.
Yeah.
I have some very religious relatives. They focus on this.
Yeah.
It's almost supersessionist in itself.
Oh,
I'm,
because in an Orthodox yeshiva, you don't study the plain word of the Torah itself often, except you do, because on every Shabbat you hear every
I'm
word.
saying,
Yeah.
that's not the focus.
Yeah, right. In the educational curriculum, it's not the focus, because the focus is how to interpret halakha, Jewish law. Right, but, and I'll say this also,
And
if you go to a Lithuanian style yeshiva, you may even skip the stories.
Right.
You're focusing only on the legal arguments, and you may even skip these stories in the Talmud, but let's study.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, someone else pick up. So now,
Moses' strength.
right, now, so so finish the paragraph, so.
Moses' strength waned as he thought his Torah knowledge was deficient.
So Akiva's giving a lecture or leading the discussion, and Moses has no idea what they're talking about. One, they might be speaking in Aramaic, but two, but he just doesn't understand the argument, right? Okay. And so Moses, grows weak.
when Rabbi Akiva arrived at the discussion of one matter, his students said to him, "My teacher, from where do you derive this?" And Rabbi Akiva said to them, "It is a halakha transmitted to Moses from Sinai." And when Moses heard this, his mind was put at ease, as this too was part of the Torah that he was to receive.
So they gave the punchline here in the commentary, but okay. So why was Moses at ease when Akiva said, "How do I know this?" It's because it's been passed down since Moses. Why is Moses at ease? He didn't understand what
He
was
hadn't
going
received it yet.
on.
It's there.
I don't know if he hasn't received it yet. What else?
One says that he was to receive, but I don't know if that's the interpretation.
It was making what God said come true, but.
Yeah, it's come true that Akiva is going to be this great teacher in the
It's all
future.
in there.
Okay, but
To me, that's all in there.
it's all in there.
Yeah.
Then Moses receives the Torah, but it doesn't mean what you understand in one generation is what is elucidated in another generation, but it's all part of the whole,
To me,
right?
it's a little bit supersessionalist.
Okay, no, but it's,
Well,
I would say it's not.
PowerPoint,
If
PowerPoint.
Akiva was saying, "I am the new Moses," that I'm the new Moses, and that what I say now goes, is that would be supersessionist.
He's kind of saying that, right? Well,
He's saying that what started in a revelation of God to Moses we are now able to fully understand these points, and in the future there'll be more points to be fully understood.
But what's the other option? If you don't do that, you end up Karaite. And
Right, and the Karaites were a group of Jews that were quite strong in the Middle Ages. They might have had their roots, in the Talmudic times too. There were other kinds of groups who didn't have the Talmudic literature at all. They were against the rabbis' interpretations and had their own interpretations. They claimed that their interpretations were, more literal to what the Torah says. Of course, they had their own interpretations too. But like through the Middle Ages, they had their own communities. They were considered Jews. Were you allowed to marry a Karaite? I think you could marry a Karaite because they were considered Jews, but they're heretics according to the rabbis, right? But the rabbinic project then becomes rooted and flexible, right?
rooted and flexible, and we already talked about the power struggle the rabbis were having.
Yeah.
By the way, we're the only ones who know
Well, okay, but the knowledge is open for everybody.
Sure, but this is-
But okay, but no, we have the correct tools to
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
But the tools that were revealed to Moses on Sinai, Akiva is saying, we are just continuing what Moses was doing, right? Moses was at ease, even though, so it's like, here, let's think of it this way. If Isaac Newton came and sat in Einstein's office in Princeton, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
He would not necessarily understand what Einstein's talking about, but he would also at the same time understand what Einstein's talking. That's right.
Is this maybe a concept of sort of the universality of the message, that it's applicable and adaptive as
Adaptive.
times change?
Adaptive, but also the truth is in the Torah for us to discern and
apply to.
right and apply, right, but like back to the crowns, Akiva's able to interpret something that Moses didn't have the tools for yet, right? But it's still from Moses on Sinai. Moses didn't know he didn't have the tools yet, maybe, right? That's what it's saying. Just like our ancestors were just as smart as we are.
Yeah.
They don't have the tools yet that we have, right? Okay, Dave.
So the story that you just said, I like that, but for your question there about supersessionalism for some of the stuff, I prefer to think of it as retcon. People familiar with that term from like Marvel Universe and other things. it's retroactive consistency.
Yeah,
They take something from a previous movie
sure.
and they want to do a new movie
Mhm.
and they kind of change the interpretation of that.
Yes, the rabbis are definitely doing that.
So it's retconning all the
Sure.
time.
Yeah,
You know, it's interesting that how it
100%.
flows to them, but
the rabbis have built the universe, right? That
Yeah.
cinematic universe.
I mean, when
Right.
you look at it, it's all this compilation of 2,000 years of writing.
Yeah.
It's got to be because there's
Yeah.
so many different
Right.
sources.
Good. Brian just said that the chat. An important point is that the rabbis claim that the actual oral Torah was given. It is an interpretation. Yes and no, right? So yes, God gave Moses this oral Torah, but like we're able to draw out. Well, one, the rabbis still argue about what it is because it wasn't, argue about what the oral Torah says and how to apply it. And I think the story is saying Moses didn't yet know what it all fully meant, right? And Akiva has other kinds of insights.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're seeing. Okay.
I mean, information systems have to change.
Yeah. Good.
I think, just from a cross-cultural perspective, I think you see this in a lot of different religions, right? And this is why religions are able to renew themselves a little bit.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's going
It's still
to be a movie everybody's talking about, like the Venice Film Festival, about the Shakers.
Okay.
Right. The Shakers were this,
Yeah.
this radical sect of Christians from England that came over to colonial America.
Yes.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
that?
Simple, yes, their famous
That's
song,
wonderful.
right?
Yeah, they have famous hymns. Yeah. But
Yeah.
what's her name? Amanda Siegfried was in it, or Siegfried, or however you say it. But anyways, they were not able to. Well, first of all, they were celibate, so that doesn't help out, right? And like they were not able to adapt for celibate reasons.
Well, when you're celibate, that really.
Yeah, that doesn't help. But yeah, we don't know how many religions there have been because they were not able to adapt, or it was a common practice. It was a common practice in the Roman world to bring in the conqueror's religion into yours, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, Baal is now Zeus, or I'm sorry,
More.
Zeus is now Jupiter. Is
Yeah.
it Jupiter?
Yeah.
Jupiter,
Yeah,
Jupiter,
exactly.
right? Just take the story into your language, right? And so, yeah, the Jews didn't want to do that. Okay.
I see this a little bit differently.
Yeah,
From all
please.
this discussion.
Please,
I see this as Moses saying, my legacy is sealed.
also,
So
yeah,
I-
very nice.
Sit back.
Not sit back, but like be comforted.
Yeah.
Be comforted, right? Yes, good. My far into the future descendants, if you will, like is still knows my name. Yeah, that's my afterlife. Yeah, that's also there. Thank you. Yeah. We'll see that. We'll look at the Choni, the circle maker story too, which has a similar poem. You might have heard that story or heard of that story. Okay, so let's keep going because now we're going to take a turn.
Okay.
So someone pick up now. Moses returned.
Moses returned and came before the Holy One, blessed be he, and said to him, Master of the universe, you have a man as great as this, and yet you still choose to give the Torah through me. Why?
Okay, so what's Moses saying?
Why am I needed?
Why me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is the future greater than the present? Right? Are our descendants smarter than us? Right? Greater than us? Okay.
Yeah. God said to him, be silent. This intention arose before me.
Right? It's God saying, this is what I'm doing.
Moses said before God, Master of the universe, you have shown me Rabbi Akiva's Torah. Now show me his reward. God said to him, return to where you were. Moses went back and saw that they were weighing Rabbi Akiva's flesh in a butcher shop.
Ooh.
Okay. As Rabbi Akiva was tortured to death by the Romans, Moses said before him, Master of the universe, this is Torah and this is its reward. God said to him, be silent. This intention arose before me.
What is it saying now?
There's always going to be anti-Semitism.
I don't know if the Romans were anti-Semitic at this point. I think they were against their subjects rebelling against them. Yeah. But okay.
Don't question me. I know what I'm.
Okay, so it could be don't question me.
It's a little bit of a Job thing.
It could be, well, what's the Job thing? What's the Torah for?
not necessarily for reward.
not for reward.
Yeah.
Being smart, being agile in your interpretations, you're not gonna get rewarded for it. In fact, you know,
Pending.
you might get persecuted by the authorities, right? So what's the story like? This dark turn. What's it trying to say?
You study Torah for its own sake.
Yeah, for its own
You
sake.
study
Yeah.
Torah for its own sake. That could be it.
It's not gonna be an easy path,
Yeah, being great doesn't mean
rewards.
actual
And,
reward.
uh,
Right, and it doesn't say like show me his reward, and God shows Akiva in the heavenly yeshiva studying with all the greats of the ages. No, it shows
to me,
Akiva's
this is
dad.
like
Yeah,
against poser syndrome. You know what this is?
no, it's
So it's like, you are a professor and you're anxious because you don't really think you're a professor.
right.
Or you're a doctor,
imposter syndrome.
yeah, imposter,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's against that.
Mhm.
Moses, you're the,
Yeah, Moses definitely had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so
Right.
don't worry about that.
right. But what is it?
Don't
So
be, don't be jealous of,
don't be jealous, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like we all die, right? But like, some of us more gruesome ways than others. Yeah, maybe.
Moses died alone in
Moses
the
died,
wilderness.
Moses didn't die alone, Moses died with God. Uh-huh. Right? But yes. But what's Moses's reward? What's Moses's reward for the Torah?
Seeing the
See the
promised land.
promise, you got to see it.
like,
Yes, but no.
like
The
this
story,
is-
what's Moses's reward?
But his
Akiva's
name
talking
is-
about him
like-
His name
a
is-
1,000 years later.
He doesn't get into the land.
Moses doesn't get in the land. It's not about a reward. The reward is that Moses still lives on
Yeah.
because Akiva is quoting him. Right?
Our,
Well,
And so Akiva, even though he was tortured to death, is still alive. That's the reward.
everyone.
our daughter suggested we watch this new show on Netflix, an animated series about Jewish families.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
I wouldn't watch it
Long
personally.
long story short.
Long story short. So Matt and I watched the first 2 episodes and one of the comments we found it offensive. Our daughter found it funny, but one of the comments made, the kid says, why do we live a good life? What's our reward
Yeah.
if we don't believe in heaven? And the parents say, you live a good life because that's what we're supposed to do. And the kid says, well, what kind of bargain did we make with God that, we don't have any actual reward? We just do good because we're supposed to do good.
Yeah. Is that what this is saying too? I mean, it's not giving us a view of the world to come or something like that. Maybe that's what it's talking about too.
Rabbi Rossoff used to talk about the immortality of influence.
For sure. I mean, I think that's in here, right? Even though Akiva's citing Moses, but Moses never said that, right? That's still comforting to Moses, right?
I heard that there's an old legend that Jews die twice.
Mm.
The first time is when you physically die,
Mhm.
and the second time is when they stop saying your name or you forget about you.
Yeah, maybe, but I'll say that's gonna happen to all of us.
Didn't happen to
You-
Akiva.
You don't know the name unless you're like a genealogy fan. You don't know the names of your great grandparents.
So
Yeah.
Rabbi, is it, I guess,
But Akiva and Moshe, we know.
Mhm.
is the reward, to me, there's like a little bit of Greek idea of like living on clay, like what they call clais, like glory in your name.
Yeah.
Is that really the reward? Is really the reward that the Torah precedes and
I think it's the Torah perceived
Yeah.
through our interpretations of it. That's also, yeah. It's not glory,
not glory for.
right? Because Akiva didn't have a glorious death. He's not Achilles. Great.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's not a Jewish thing, I would say.
Right, but the rabbis know those stories enough, like they're not, scholars of Homer, but they know them enough, right? Yeah. Yep,
Yeah, this is,
it's not
There's
about the maidens singing their name,
Yeah, there's no, that's why it's not glory for Moses, it's glory that,
it's glory for God.
it's God for God and.
Good. All right, should we do another story? Should we start another story? Okay, so now here, let's do Hillel and comics.
55.
It's like-
Large.
Yeah.
No,
We'll start another story. What's the?
Like he cited this, I mean. Ah. And then,
At least one, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a hot here. Well, yeah, you're sitting that they do to her for your own. Yeah, once a month. The second year adults. I agree, that award.
Wait, what's the?
Is it one way to do your service? There's a service, there's like.
I'll say one more thing, another learning about the Talmud and how that page of the Vilna edition influences us, so how we cite things in the Talmud is we'll say the page, and is it Aleph or Bet, right? Because a page, a folio page is like, is an A side and a B side, right? And that's how you know things, and like, before the printer in Vilna put page numbers on it, people would have just known where things were in the Talmud by citing a few words, and you would have to know, the same thing Christians invented, the chapters of the Bible. Before that, the Jews would say, this parasha, or maybe start reciting a few words and you would know where to go, right? So, yeah. So, okay. So here it is,
our ancestors were definitely smarter than us.
what's that?
Our ancestors were definitely smarter than us.
Well, they were able to
They're different.
memorize more things because they didn't have TV.
Yeah.
But they didn't have, just think about a few years ago, or think about your college days, and you were sitting around in a bar. I mean, maybe this is just for the guys. Sorry, you're sitting around in the bar and like talking about a TV show you used to watch as a kid, and you would say, "Oh, who was that actor?" And then you would argue about it, right? And someone would win, but you didn't know. And now what do? You Google it, right?
Google
and so like
GPT.
Yeah, so we don't have any memory for anything, right?
They had a lot less to remember.
Yeah, I don't know. They probably had just as much.
Yeah, it was very focused though, right? Because it was.
Yeah.
And the average
There was a
person
lot
didn't do that.
If you had more kids, you had to remember all their names too.
This is only for the scholars who are memorizing this and not.
Right, no, there would be, in the rabbinic academies, there would be special people whose job was to remember better than, to really remember.
Yeah.
And they would call upon them to bring up traditions and stuff. Yeah. Okay. And that's also why the rabbis are arguing. They'll argue in their discussions about, is this the authentic teaching from such and such rabbi? They're arguing about remembering somehow, right? Because they didn't necessarily write it down. Okay, good. Let's start the story. There's several parts, so it's okay. We don't have to finish it. Okay. So here's some famous stories about Hillel and Shammai. Who are Hillel and Shammai?
Teachers.
First of all, they were never called Rabbi Hillel and Shammai.
Oh,
Right? There is a Rav Hillel later, but that's a different person. They're not called Rabbi Hillel and Shammai, and that's just pedantic. Whenever you see a rabbi saying Rabbi Hillel, then you're like, it's not called Rabbi. So does that mean that title didn't exist? Did it mean, so like in the New Testament, sometimes Jesus is called Rabbi, right? Was it an official title or an honorific, right? So maybe we don't have an official title yet till another generation. I don't know. But Hillel and Shammai are not called Rabbi. Rabbi means my master, right? Rabbi. Okay. And then, but they found schools of thought. And often in the Talmud, you'll see it'll be called Beit Hillel or Beit Shammai, right? Which means the school of Hillel, the school of Shammai. Okay. Right. So sometimes the stories are about their students, actually, not about them. But here we have stories about them personally. Who were they? They lived the end of, BC into the 1st century AD. They're roughly contemporaneous, a little bit older than Jesus. Okay, probably lived in Jerusalem. A story is that Hillel, though, came from Babylonia and immigrated to the land of Israel. That happened a lot. The scholars will go back and forth. And also, there becomes a tradition later that Hillel is descended from King David. Okay, who knows if that's true, but descended from King David. What do we know about Hillel versus Shammai?
Shammai always loses.
Shammai usually loses, except there's a few times he doesn't, but yes. But
He's stricter.
He's stricter, but what does strict mean? But he's definitely, his personality is stricter too.
Shammai.
Okay. Shammai,
Yeah.
Shammai is better. So what does Hillel? Hillel means like praise. It means in Shammai, they're both Aramaicized names, has to do with the name, like shame, right? Yep, okay. All
What
right,
about from Hallelujah or no?
but that, yeah.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Hillel, right? You know, of course, the Jewish student organization named after Hillel, right? Okay. Our new Shinshinit, or we call him Rishonah here, our new Israeli kid that's gonna be with our community, her name is Hila, right? That's a feminine version of Hillel, right? Okay. So Songa.
Since the Gemara discusses forbearance of sages who remain silent in the face of nonsensical comments, it cites additional relevant examples.
Right, so there was all these examples of different sages' patience, but now here we get, okay,
Rap battle.
The sages taught in a Baraita.
a baraita. So a baraita is rabbinic statements from the time of the Mishnah that didn't make it into the Mishnah. Okay, so this is, the rabbis are saying this is an old tradition, right, of the generation of Hillel and Shammai, right? Okay.
Person should always be patient like Hillel and not impatient like Shammai. The Gemara related there was an incident involving two people who wagered with each other and said, anyone who will go and aggravate Hillel to the point that he reprimands him will take 400 zuz.
Right, zuz is
100 zuz.
is some kind of
Currency.
currency, right?
Susan.
Yeah, like from Chagad, yeah, Susan. Yeah, so they made a bet, okay?
One of them said, I will aggravate him. That day he chose to bother Hillel. The day it was Shabbat Eve. Hillel was washing the hair on his head.
What is Shabbat evening, Erev Shabbat?
Getting ready for Shabbos.
He's getting ready. Erev Shabbat, even though we now say the Shabbat evening service is Erev Shabbat, no, Erev Shabbat means like Friday. He's getting ready for Shabbat. He's taking his weekly shower or bath or whatever, right? He's putting on nice clothes. He's got to do all this before the sun sets, right? So he's busy.
He's on a.
And who knows what Miss Hillel is doing, right? You know, she's probably busy too, right? But here is someone comes to his house, okay?
He went and passed the entrance to Hillel's house and in the meaning manner said, who here is Hillel? Who here is Hillel? Hillel wrapped himself in a dignified garment and went out to greet him. He said to him, my son, what do you seek? He said to him, I have a question to ask. Hillel said to him, ask my son.
All right, so I'm stopping. But Bini, my son, what is the echo from the Bible when you say Bini, right? It's something that we'll read on Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, yeah, Isaac.
Okay, that's what Abraham says to his son. It's a loving, patient way, right? Okay.
Yeah, so he's not annoyed yet.
He's not annoyed yet, or he's able to. He has the disposition to greet everyone like Abraham greeted Isaac.
Right.
Right.
The man asked him, why are the heads of Babylonians oval? He was alluding to and attempting to insult Hillel, who was Babylonian. He said to him, my son, you have asked a significant question. The reason is because they do not have clever midwives. They do not know how to shape the child's head at birth.
Okay. So what did Hillel do? Not only did he greet him as Abraham greets Isaac, what did he do?
Sending himself right back.
He honored
He
a ridiculous question.
with a good answer.
He said, that's a significant question.
Yeah. Or was he playing along, or like? But he didn't.
He
didn't
didn't demean him.
He didn't demean him, or he didn't take the bait.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't take the bait and get insulted. Right.
He doesn't know if this guy's trying to irritate him yet.
He may know that
May
he's
not.
trying to irritate him, but he's not taking the bait.
Yeah,
We don't know, right?
Yeah, we don't know.
But he didn't say, get out of here.
Get out of me! I'm getting ready for Shabbat. Talk to me tomorrow evening. Yeah.
He was cordial.
Yeah.
Even though the man insulted him.
Even though it might have been, that's this
You know,
interpretation that was an insult.
head.
Yeah, you're right. It might have been. Yeah, I was thinking that, before I saw that, that loss from Steinsaltz, that, it's just a stupid question or a racist question or whatever, right? But he's asking, it might be he's trying to insult Hillel, right?
So there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Even if Hillel thinks it's stupid, he's not allowing it to for him to get angry or impatient, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right up.
That man went, waited 1 hour, a short while, returned to look for Hillel and said, "Who here is Hillel? Who here is Hillel?" Again, Hillel wrapped himself and went out to greet him. Hillel said to him, "My son, what do you seek?" The man said to him, "I have a question to ask." He said to him, "Ask, my son, ask." The man asked, "Why are the eyes of the residents of Tadmor bleary?"
That's the word that you were.
Hillel said to him, "My son, you have asked a significant question. The reason is because they live among the sands, and the sands get into their eyes."
Sounds like ChatGPT. Great question.
Right.
Once again, the man went, waited an hour, returned, and said, "Who here is Hillel? Who here is Hillel?" Again, Hillel, wrapped himself and went out to greet him. He said to him, "My son, what do you seek?" He said to him, "I have a question to ask." He said to him, "Ask, my son, ask." The man asked, "Why do Africans have wide feet?" Hillel said to him,
African probably meant
Egyptian.
Egypt or Ethiopian, or it might have been like Libya, like farther away in Africa than Egypt, probably, right?
Hillel said to him, "You have asked a significant question. The reason is because they live in marshlands and their feet widen to enable them to walk through those swampy areas."
Yeah.
Right, so
Hillel seems filled with like medical knowledge.
Understanding of natural selection, clearly.
Yes. But he's not like, he's not allowing, like, the guy's asking questions that are insulting other ethnic groups, and Hillel's like not taking that bait and saying, "Don't be a race." You know, he's like, you know, the guy's not asking for knowledge either, right? Yeah.
The man said to him, "I have many more questions to ask, but I'm afraid lest you get angry." Hillel wrapped himself and sat before him, and he said to him, "All the questions that you have to ask them." The man got angry and said to him, "Are you Hillel, whom they call the Nasi of Israel?"
The Nasi of Israel, the Prince of Israel. It could have been an official title, because later, like, Yehuda, who wrote down the Mishnah, is the Nasi, which was the official, like, Judean representative to the Romans, who's he's a descendant of Hillel, or it just could be like an honorific. You're the Prince of Israel, right? Okay.
He said to him, "Yes." He said to him, "If it is you, then may there not be many like you in Israel." Hillel said to him, "My son, for what reason do you say this?" The man said to him, "Because I lost 400 zoos because of you." Hillel said to him,
So the man got impatient.
"Be vigilant of your spirit and avoid situations of this sort." Hillel is worthy of having you lose 400 zoos and another 400 zoos on his account, and Hillel will not get upset.
No problem. Okay. All right. So I think next week then we'll pick up with the Gentile who then goes to Hillel and Shammai. Okay. You might have heard the story. Yeah.
The 1 foot.
1 foot. Yeah. Okay. So any final thoughts, questions?
Hillel dresses very slowly.
Yeah.
Or a very long back.
Right.
Quickly.
How, what do you mean?
Because he.
Hour here. Oh, no, the guy was waiting an hour to make it more urgent to get closer to Shabbat.
But Hillel.
Yeah, but there's, who knows? Yeah. Well, it takes a long time to heat up water in a bath in the ancient world, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good. So,
I could use it.
We're gonna continue this, so we should leave these, right?
leave those ones. Yes, you can the Akiva ones we can take back.